It's well known for a while that Quentin Tarantino is set to retire, but most people had expected him to retire after making a film following Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But on a recent podcast, Tarantino has hinted that Once Upon a Time may be his final project. I was working on a Tarantino video that was a little critical of his so called promise, noting that it's not as accurate as people think, but we'll put that to the side because a full retrospective would take way, way too long. And we don't know if he's being entirely serious because he has hinted he's going to retire early, even before the quote final film. So we don't know how to take this. But let's say he's being completely serious and Once Upon a Time is his final film. I would have to agree with him that he does end on a very high note because I really, really liked it. I think it's one of the top 10 of the decade, although you have to be careful, like, where do we date it? Is it the top 10 of this decade or the last decade? Whatever the case, it is a really, really great film. I'm not even sure what I would give it as a score, but it's definitely far above 8. I don't know if it's an 8.5 or a 9. I don't think it's a perfect film, but I do agree it's a really powerful, remarkable film and shows a lot of his old virtues coming in very much to the fore. But like the Snyder film, it is long and it is going to take a bit of a toll on you. I didn't mind the length myself. I thought it was appropriate. I thought it was fine in terms of what he was building, but some people may have an issue with the length, but I thought it was fine. I thought he wasn't being too self-indulgent for the most part. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was about the Manson murders and a kind of weird historical fictional look back at old Hollywood. But if you know Quinn's career, he's really taken on a huge number of topics and a huge range of characters. Now, I do come more from the Quinn skeptic camp that he seems to be repeating himself, and I do think after Jackie Brown, he hasn't really stretched himself out that much. But nevertheless, even within his own parameters, I do think you can never say he makes a bad film. He makes films that are sometimes of very poor quality. Probably Death Proof is one of his worst films, but he's always bringing a lot to the table. There's always a lot of thinking, a lot of emotion, and a lot of choices he makes with camera movement, with photography, with set design. There's just always so much to learn from him. So if you want to be a filmmaker, he is kind of a film course onto himself because just understanding the films, you have to know a lot of film history and respect it. So from that perspective, I've always had a lot of respect for Quentin Tarantino, but his flaws are also very notorious and very well known that he just shamelessly steals entire plots, dialogue. Almost virtually everything he does has been done by somebody else, and he recreates scenes almost shot for shot. He's very notorious in just borrowing, stealing from others. But I also do agree that I'm not as concerned with that as long as he does something productive with it. I wish he was a little bit more honest and was more generous in paying people back. But I also don't agree with others that he's just being greedy. He has tried to do things for people. He's had actually tried to introduce quite a few Asian filmmakers who are relatively unknown. He's also helped a lot of people behind the scenes. So he has done quite a lot, but I just wish he did a little bit more given how much he borrows. So he's not a very original director, and he is very derivative at many points. But I don't think that makes for saying he's a bad director. It's just he's a very particular director with very particular desires and very particular focus. I wish he did stretch himself out a little bit more, but still, he's covered quite an ambitious range of topics from war to crime to film history to women in power to the uses of violence to theology. A lot of people think he's a nihilist, but if you look really closely at his films, it's remarkable because he's a Catholic how much religion is in his films just over and over again. People are driven by or are profane or they have some weird connection to cosmology. And they even talk about it. They talk about God a whole lot in his dialogue. But again, is he very deep? I don't think it's a deep philosophy or theology, but it is a very persistent and consistent one. So I'm always surprised when people think he just puts out violence or even sex for no reason. No, there's a logic to the Quentin universe, and be patient, but you'll put the pieces together. If anything, I find it remarkable how simplistic his quote ethical code is, but that's just me. Quite a lot to take in whether Once Upon a Time really is going to be his final project. If it is, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a really interesting canon of films. Though what to make of it, it will take a very long to assess because he's become so popular and now he's been mocked and ridiculed and parodied, mostly positively. Most people give an homage or a nod that's positive. I mean, just recently, the Oscar winner for the best director thanked him explicitly. So there's very few times you can say in Oscar history that a living director has been honored by another winner with such effusive praise. So he's in a very small club in terms of being very widely respected by most filmmakers. Though I don't know if he's one of the better filmmakers. I think that's a more contentious subject. But nevertheless, if this is his final film, he'll be sorely missed. But don't think he's going to go away. He's still a producer. He's still a writer. Sometimes he's allowing his scripts to be used by others. And for a while, he was going to let his Star Trek script be used and directed by someone else. But that project eventually went away. But who knows? Maybe it'll come back. So he's not out of it completely. He is still going to be part of the Hollywood scene in many ways, and people forget he also is an actor, so he may pop up here and there in many very different projects. But as a director, of course, he's primarily well known, and that's what most people want to see him as a director as well as a writer, directing his own scripts. So we'll see if this sticks, and we've seen the last of Quentin Tarantino, the director, as an auteur. If so, there's still a lot to dig through with his film, so I don't think we're going to be stop discussing him for quite a while. Alright, this has been a short video essay on Quentin Tarantino's alleged retirement from film. Thank you for listening.